Okay, so I have this powder coated tumbler. It is linked in the supply list. Not all tumblers work for this Citristrip etching. It's really just a trial and error and see what works for you. I tried some from Sam's Club and I tried a painted one from Michael's, and they were all fails. So this is the one that I've successfully done, and I have that linked in the supply list. But basically, I took my decal, I cut it from adhesive vinyl, and then I put transfer tape over top of it, and I am going to burnish it. I also have an alcohol swab, which I am going to do this first, and I'm going to take the lid off. And then this is a Artist protective mat, and it's a heat safe mat. I use it for sublimation and setting my hot stuff out on it after I sublimate, but I also found that it is a great non-stick, non-skid surface for this. On my table, it'll roll, but on this mat, it stays put. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to clean this to make sure that there's no dust. And my decal is kind of large, so we're going to see how this turns out. See how it looks. And then if I clean this in the beginning, I'm going to let that dry. So I'm going to scoot that up out of the way. Let it dry. Then I'm going to burnish the front. And then I'm going to burnish the back side with this spatula. And this is the same process you use for glass etching as well. And then I'm just going to carefully peel my backing away. And if I go slow, I can look and see if there's any pieces that are not sticking, and I can just push those back down. And then I can, another trick I learned from Kelly Wayment is I can hold pressure on this. This one takes practice, but hold pressure on it and then roll the backing off as well. Go slow, and it just takes some practice. Now, the biggest thing when you're doing any sort of etching is you really need a good stick. I have the stencil cut, so I have excess around the edges. I'm also going to cover that with painter's tape around the edges before I apply the Citristrip. But you want to make sure that all of your pieces are very well stuck down to the blank, and they are not going to hopefully leak underneath. So I'm just going to check this. This is dry. So I am going to go ahead, and I'm just going to go this direction. It really, whatever you want to do, if you have a different design, I start in the middle, and just depending on how I want my design to lay down. So I'm going to start off in the middle and work my way to each edge. And you really just want it to have a good seal. And if you don't have a good seal, lift it up gently and just try to work that around. It really depends on your decal, the shape, the size. This one is a pretty good size decal. It would be more noticeable probably if I was trying to apply it straight on. And kind of why I did it on a diagonal. But it also fits the saying on the decal. So you want to go take your time. So I'm going to kind of speed up this video as I do this, because I don't need to fill it with empty talk. Okay, the biggest thing is you don't want any air, anything that's near your design area. Out here on the edges, it's not quite as important that it's absolutely flat, and we can fix that as we go along and take the transfer tape off. So we'll kind of work with that. But what you really need is you really need around your design sealed as possible. You want all those edges. And it'll get a little bit easier. The transfer tape is pulling up the vinyl a little bit more as I'm doing this, but I really just want to make sure my design is well stuck down. So I'm going to carefully just remove the transfer tape. Again, going the same way, I'm going to peel it back sharply and go slow. So I can smooth it back down as I go. If you lift up on your transfer tape, that is going to lift up and it's going to cause force on your adhesive vinyl or adhesive stencil, whatever you're using, which means that it could lift that section. So just go slow, take your time. It'll be worth it because etching is permanent. And we'll kind of do this more as we go around, but I'm getting a good seal around my design area. I just want to make sure on that. The outer edges I can work with here in a minute. Like this right here, I need to work with that a little bit because it was coming into my design area. That's not what I want. So I just push that transfer tape back down and I'll burnish it again. Out here on this outside edge, I'm not worried about it as much. Same thing up here now that I'm getting closer to the edges. You just want to go slow. And the best part about having a cutting machine is if something happens, you can just take this back off and you could cut another stencil. But once you apply that etching cream to it, or the paint Citristrip that I'm going to be using, it is permanent. So I'll get this off of here. And then I can kind of go around and I can smooth down these edges. So they will hopefully stay put. And that's this felt tipped spatula is a great tool to have. There's all kinds of brands. I'm using a vinyl kit. I'll link that in the supply list as well. That's from Crafter Cuts. It has several different tools in it. And it's just the one that I grabbed for this project. They are an authorized Silhouette reseller. So they have all kinds of Silhouette products, blades and mats as well. But that's linked in the supply list. And we're just going to continue to do this until we have everything how we would like it. Now it is a permanent adhesive vinyl. Typically you wouldn't want it to stick. I'm just kind of waiting as I talk to see if any more of those air bubbles come up. Oracal adhesive vinyl, you typically would not want it to stay on your object long, but you can also peel off Oracal 651 easily. So I'm not too terribly worried about it. If the worst comes to worst, I would just have to clean off the adhesive from the Oracal vinyl. Otherwise, it's not going to be a problem. I still don't leave it for too long. I'm going to go apply the etching cream shortly after this once I make sure that none of these areas are going to lift. I'm getting some lifting in some of the areas. You can also very carefully hit it with a blow dryer just to help it to stick. Don't do it too much. But I am just going to let this sit for a little bit, and if I see anything else, I'm going to push those bubbles out. So continue doing what you are doing, and we will go to the shop to do the Citristrip once I am confident my thing isn't going to lift. Now, I do want to add that I'm going to put painter's tape on it. So I'm going to grab that. Okay, so I'm still getting a little bit of these areas. I'm just going to smooth those down as much as I can. I am going to be adding a layer of painter's tape. And what we learned when we did it the first time is, while you may think it is a lot of painter's tape to go through, it really helps to protect your surface if you cover the whole thing. I kind of glopped, and it depends on your design too. My design kind of goes for a long distance here. So it's going to go off the edges, which means that it's more likely it's going to drip or run. So I just want to make sure that my whole cup is protected, because I don't want the whole thing to be etched. So I'm just going to work my way around and apply this painter's tape so that the etching cream, Citristrip Etching Paint Stripper does not get underneath it. So I'm going to smooth this down. So I'll speed up the video as I do that whole thing. Okay, so now that I have the entire cup protected, I'm just going to double check that all of my pieces, I don't have air bubbles. I still keep getting this little tiny one, but it's not near my design. So I am pretty confident I should be okay. You never know. So now I am going to just watch this for just a few minutes, let it settle. Make sure there's no air bubbles, because again, once you put that etching cream, or that, in this case, the Citristrip Paint Stripper, once you put that on there, it is permanent. So let's go to the shop and we'll do that next. Okay, so I've snuck out into the workshop, and I'm using this Citristrip stripping gel. Anytime that you're using etching cream or a stripping gel or anything like that, you want to be very careful. You want to use it in a well-ventilated area. You want to follow the instructions on the back for care and usage. Just be very careful. I haven't had any problems. This really doesn't seem to bother me. Fume-wise, it has a pleasant smell, as it smells like citrus, but you still always want to be careful. So I have some rubber or some gloves here to protect myself. And then I have a very high-tech device of a popsicle stick that I'm going to use to work this around. Now, we've tried two different methods. I kind of glopped on the first time, while my husband just kind of spread it on. It really just depends on your tumbler and what's going to work for you. So what I'm going to do is, this is a silicone mat that I wiped off. My husband uses it, so sawdust all over in the garage, but I wiped it off well, and then I'm just actually going to, because I know this gel is going to ooze over the sides because of the way my design is shaped. So I'm going to flip this around, and then I'm going to use this high-tech popsicle stick to spread out the Citristrip. And if you need to, you can get a cup to help you with that. I am just going to pour a little bit out here and just start working with it. And then I'm just going to spread that around. So my tools, and you want to make sure that all parts of your design are covered. It's just something fun to play around with. It will take practice. Not everyone probably will turn out. And the more you do it, you'll either find you like it or you don't. Just like everything. We've had good results with it so far. So make sure your entire design is covered. I'm going to get just a little bit more for this side. And maybe just a bit more. I just want to make sure that I have good coverage everywhere. And it never fails that if you do get the etching cream or the Citristrip someplace you do not want it to etch, it will etch in the snap of your finger. So just be careful, go slow. And that looks pretty good. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my timer for 90 minutes. I'm going to cap my Citristrip because that's a disaster waiting to happen. And then I'm going to set my timer for 90 minutes and I will come back. I'm going to scrape that off. And then I'm going to rinse it in a tub of water and start to work the paint off, or the powder coated surface off. Each powder coated tumbler can just vary in what might need done for how to get it off. The last ones we did, I was able to just work with it and get it off with a paper towel. But we will see how this one turns out. Okay, so I did not time this right. It's been 60 minutes and I need to take this off so I can leave the house. So we're gonna cross our fingers. That should be the first thing that you do when you put it on. I'm gonna cross my fingers. We're gonna see what happens after 60 minutes. If all else fails, I'll just try again. So I no longer need the Citristrip. I'm gonna need some paper towels. Definitely some paper towels. And then I have this tub here. Hopefully that's on camera. I have a tub with some water and I'm just gonna pour the water in there. And then I'm going to scrape this off and I'm just going to dispose of it on the paper towel. So you can see that it did etch, or it did seep down. It's okay on the painter's tape, not a problem. You can hear my husband's truck in the background probably, and the heater in our garage. So I'm just going to carefully do this. You don't want to scrape too hard because you don't want the vinyl pieces to come off. Otherwise you could get the etch where you don't want it. And another tip is to don't leave it on too long. I've seen where a user has left it on like 8 hours and that just eats through the vinyl and eats everything. So it was a big blurry mess. So I'm just gonna take this off. I'm not sure if you could reuse it or not. You could try. I know etching cream you can reuse. So now my vinyl started to lift a bit. So I'm just gonna take a paper towel, wipe it off, and I'm gonna try and get this rinsed off as quickly as possible. So I'm just gonna set it in here, rinse it off, wipe it off again. And then I am going to start to work. Get some more paper towels here. And I'm just gonna start to remove the decal and the painter's tape. So I'm going to speed up the video here, but I just want to make sure that I get all the Citristrip off before I start peeling. And my vinyl's already coming off as it is. And then I'm going to wash my hand to make sure I don't have any on there. And I'm going to start removing this. If needed, I can wash it again. Once I remove this, I'm going to then take a paper towel and kind of work and see how the stripper did to take off the powder coating. Again, take your time. I'm kind of in a rush just because of my time frame of having to leave, but I am doing it a bit early so we can see what it's going to look like. I can see that it did make a difference. It's lighter. If I rub this in here, you can see it's starting to come off. So it did etch, and it really looks like it did a good job. So I'm just going to finish taking this off. Woo. Happy dance. Anybody else do happy dances when their projects turn out? So I'll just get some water. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Turned out so good. So then I'm just going to kind of clean up this mess here. So my, the cream is gone. And then I'll just take a dry paper towel. It's kind of abrasive, so that should help. And I just start rinsing that away. Not rinsing. I'm kind of using my fingernail. I don't have much of a fingernail, but it comes off pretty easy. And you can just take your time. If you got a good seal, you should see good lines. Ooh, I'm loving it. Now I'll fast forward on the video and we'll get to the end. Okay, this turned out fantastic. So here is the entire design. Now I would take it to your sink and wash the entire cup before use. I would not use anything that's abrasive because then you're going to scratch the stainless steel that's underneath, but there is the finished project. And then I will share a close-up better photo here.